It started with a text that said, "You free this weekend? Need your taste. It's ring stuff." That was from Jamie, my best friend since high school, straight as a steel beam, and newly engaged to a girl named Tess, who looked like she'd stepped out of a bridal magazine. I stared at the message longer than I should have, thumbs hovering over my phone before I finally replied, "Sure, happy to help." Truth was, I hadn't even met Tess yet. They got together during the 2 years Jamie and I sort of lost touch. He moved across the country, started some tech job in Seattle, while I stayed in Brooklyn, clinging to freelance gigs and overpriced coffee. We'd recently reconnected after he moved back for work, and now he was getting married. I told myself it didn't mean anything, that it was just a favor, but there was something quietly unsettling about helping him pick the symbol of forever for someone else. Someone who wasn't me. We met at a jewelry boutique in Midtown. The kind of place where they offer you a glass of champagne before you even say what you're there for. Jamie looked good. Like, stupidly good. Tall, fresh haircut, soft sweater that clung in all the right ways. He greeted me with a grin and a bear hug that lingered half a second too long. "Man, thanks for coming," he said. "Tess keeps sending me screenshots of stuff she likes, but I don't want to mess this up. You've got taste," I laughed. "So I'm the gay best friend now?" "Honorary," he joked, nudging me. "You're the only person I trust not to let me blow $5,000 on something that looks like a bottle cap." We spent almost 2 hours in that place. I learned more about Tess in those 2 hours than I had in the past 6 months. She liked minimal designs, hated rose gold, wanted something timeless. Jamie kept turning to me after every option the jeweler presented, raising his eyebrows like, "What do you think?" At one point, he tried on a ring for size, just to hold it up, and for a brief second, I caught a flash of something stupid in my chest, some flicker of what it would look like if he were holding that ring out for me. I buried it fast, laughed it off, told him, "That one looks like something your mom would wear. You're not proposing to her, right?" He cracked up, and that was that. He chose a ring. Oval cut, solitaire, platinum band. Clean, elegant, not too flashy. He bought it that day. Outside the store, he clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Seriously, I couldn't have done that without you." I shrugged. "It's just a ring." "No," he said, more serious now. "It's not." I didn't know what to say to that, so I let it go. The next few weeks passed like normal. He sent me a photo when he proposed. Tess's hand, the ring sparkling against her skin, his caption said. She said yes. I double-tapped it, replied with a fire emoji, and ignored the weird, sharp pang that came with it. But that wasn't the end of the story. 3 weeks later, he called me. Late. I was already in bed, phone buzzing beside me. Jamie's name lighting up my screen at 12:43 a.m. I hesitated before answering. "Everything okay?" I asked, my voice rough with sleep. There was a pause. Then he said, "She gave the ring back." I sat up. "What?" She called it off. He said, like he still didn't believe it himself. Said she couldn't do it, said she didn't feel ready, whatever the hell that means. My chest went tight. I didn't know if it was sympathy or something else. "Shit, Jamie, I'm sorry." "Yeah," he said. "Me too." I expected him to end the call there. Instead, he kept talking. About how it happened, about the way she didn't even cry, about how he didn't know if he was relieved or wrecked, about how he'd just been sitting in his living room for the last 2 hours, staring at the little velvet box. Eventually, he said, "Can I come over?" I didn't even think about it. Yeah. Doors unlocked. When he showed up, he looked the same, but smaller somehow. Like some invisible thing had been pulled out of him, and he hadn't noticed it missing yet. He crashed onto my couch and just sat there, like the silence in the room was the only thing holding him together. And I sat with him. Just us. No wedding, no ring. Just Jamie. And me. Jamie didn't go home that night. Not that we planned it. We never even said it out loud. But after we sat there in silence for what felt like hours, he eventually leaned back against the cushions, eyes bloodshot, and said, "You mind if I crash here?" I tossed him a pillow. "You know where the blankets are." He didn't even change. Just curled up on my couch, the same one we used to game on for hours back in college, and knocked out like a switch had been flipped. Meanwhile, I lay in my room staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. My mind kept circling the same thought, like water circling a drain. She gave the ring back. It echoed. Not because I wanted them to stay together, but because the image of Jamie standing there with a ring in his pocket, hopeful, nervous, smiling like he was building a life, was still stuck in my head. Now that version of him was just gone. When I woke up the next morning, the apartment smelled like coffee. Jamie was in my kitchen, barefoot, hair a mess, wearing the same sweater from last night. He looked over his shoulder and grunted a sleepy, "Morning." I leaned in the doorway. "You make that coffee with your tears?" He snorted. "Nah. Couldn't find any oat milk, so I cried into the filter." We both laughed, and it felt normal again for a second. But then the pause came. The quiet one. The kind that settled between words and reminded you everything wasn't actually okay. "I'm taking a few days off work," he said eventually. Told them I needed time. "You do," I said. He nodded slowly, then added, "I don't want to be alone right now." That was the first time he stayed with me more than a night. It turned into 3, then a week. We didn't talk much about Tess, not directly, just in fragments. A text she sent, a mutual friend asking what happened. But mostly, we just existed, side by side, like something had been reset, and we were finding our way back into each other's lives without really acknowledging how long we'd been out of them. He slept on the couch even though I offered him my bed a couple times. I started to learn his coffee order again. He started cooking dinner without asking. And sometime around the 3rd or 4th night, we were both on the couch watching a bad horror movie, half a beer deep, when he turned to me and said, "She said I wasn't being honest with myself." The words dropped like a stone. I muted the TV. "About what?" He didn't answer right away, just looked down at his beer, fingers tapping the label. "She didn't mean cheating," he said finally. "She meant like, deep down, I wasn't all in." I waited. "She said I was forcing something because it looked right on paper," he went on, "that I didn't love her the way she wanted to be loved." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. "She wasn't wrong," he added quietly. I looked at him. He looked at me, and for one moment, just one, I thought he was going to say something else. Something that would cross a line I'd always known existed between us. But instead, he just turned back to the TV and unmuted it, like he'd said too much already. That night, I couldn't sleep again. Not because I was overthinking what he'd said, but because I couldn't stop remembering the way he looked at me right before he didn't say anything. The next morning, I found the ring in my desk drawer. He must have slipped it in there sometime when I wasn't home or wasn't paying attention. It was in the little white box, untouched, just sitting next to my stack of sketchbooks and random chords like it belonged there. When he woke up, I held it up between 2 fingers. "You left this." Jamie rubbed his face and sighed. "Yeah, I don't know what to do with it." "Return it?" He shrugged. "Maybe." I held it a little longer before setting it down gently. If I had $5,000 sitting in a box, I'd at least go on vacation. Jamie didn't laugh. He just looked at me with that same unreadable expression I was starting to memorize. Then he said, "Would you come with me?" It was casual, tossed out like nothing, but my heart stuttered anyway. "To return the ring?" "No," he said, looking down. "To go away for a bit, just to clear my head." I swallowed. "I don't know." He looked up. "Would it be weird?" "Depends where we go." He smiled, barely. "Somewhere that doesn't feel like real life." And for reasons I still can't explain, I said, "Yeah, okay." We didn't plan it the way most people plan trips. There was no itinerary, no hotel booked, no list of must-see attractions. Jamie just picked a direction, north, and said, "Let's drive until we don't feel like driving anymore." 2 days later, we were halfway upstate in a borrowed SUV, sharing playlists and gas station snacks, watching the city shrink in the rearview mirror. The ring box was in the glove compartment. He hadn't touched it since that morning, and I didn't ask about it again. We ended up in a small lakeside town neither of us had heard of before. It had a diner, a hardware store, a liquor shop that doubled as a video rental, and a bed and breakfast run by a retired couple who looked like they hadn't been surprised by anything in 50 years. "This okay?" Jamie asked as we stepped into the room. 2 twin beds, a dusty TV, a window view of a crooked dock and still water. "Perfect," I said. It was too quiet for the first hour. Like, the silence made our thoughts too loud. So we unpacked nothing and went straight for the liquor store, got a bottle of cheap whiskey in 2 plastic cups, and ended up on the dock by midnight, the stars flickering above us like a screensaver. Jamie took a sip and sighed. "I don't know who I am without her." I didn't answer. "She became everything so fast," he went on. "My weekends, my routine, my future plans, it was all just Tess, Tess, Tess." I looked out over the water. It was so still it barely looked real. "And now it's like," he cut off, exhaling hard. "I'm supposed to be devastated, right? But I'm not. Maybe that's the clarity you needed." "Or maybe I'm broken," he muttered. "You're not." He turned to me. "Then why do I feel lighter?" "Because you weren't in love," I said. "Not in the way people talk about when they know." Jamie looked at me for a long moment. "Have you ever been in love?" It felt like a trap, like the beginning of a conversation I'd rehearsed but never dared speak. So I dodged. "Define love." He smiled faintly. "The kind that makes you say no to every other version of happiness." I sipped my drink. "Then yeah, once." He looked at me again. Slower this time. Like he was rewinding the tape. Was it serious? "It was quiet," I said. "Didn't know I was in it until it was already too late." That shut him up. For a while, neither of us said anything. We just sat there, passing the bottle back and forth, the whiskey biting a little less with each sip. The wind picked up. The dock creaked beneath us. At one point, he let his shoulder lean lightly against mine. I didn't move. When we finally walked back to the room, we were buzzed and tired, both silent again but in a different way, a comfortable way. I turned off the lights and lay down in my twin bed, staring at the ceiling. Jamie's voice came out of the dark. "Was it me?" I didn't answer at first. He rolled onto his side. "The person you were in love with." Was it me? I stared at the shadowy outline of the ceiling fan, my heart hammering loud enough to drown out everything else. "Yes," I said quietly. He didn't respond. I could barely hear him breathing. And just when I thought maybe he'd fallen asleep, or maybe I shouldn't have said it, he whispered, "I think that's why it didn't work with her." I turned my head, facing him across the narrow gap between our beds. I couldn't see his face in the dark, but I could feel his attention like static electricity in the air. "What are you saying?" I asked. "That I think I've known for a while," he said. "And I just didn't want it to be true. Because if it was, it meant I'd hurt someone. Or I'd have to admit I wasn't the person everyone thought I was." "And now?" His voice got smaller. "Now you're the only thing that makes sense." Silence again. This time, it wasn't awkward. It was thick, fragile, charged. I heard him shift, then the creak of his mattress as he got up. A moment later, I felt the dip of mine. Jamie slid in beside me, slow and unsure. He didn't touch me right away. Just lay there, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off his skin. "You don't have to," I whispered. "I know," he said. "I just don't want to be anywhere else right now." I didn't sleep much that night, not because anything happened, but because everything already had. The morning after Jamie slid into my bed, the sun came in too bright through the thin curtains, like it was trying to expose something we hadn't named yet. He was already awake when I opened my eyes, lying on his side, staring at the ceiling like he'd been running laps inside his own head. Our bodies hadn't touched all night, not really, but the space between us had still been electric, too charged to ignore. "Hey," I said, voice raspy. He glanced over. "Hey." Neither of us moved. The silence stretched. "You sleep okay?" I asked. "Not really." I nodded. "Me neither." He sat up slowly, running a hand through his hair. "I keep trying to figure out what last night was." "You mean the talking?" I said carefully. "Or the part where you got into my bed?" His mouth twitched. "Both." I didn't push him. I just waited. Jamie stood and walked to the small window, looking out at the lake. His shoulders were tense, arms crossed loosely in front of him. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted finally. "But it's like I don't want to lie to myself anymore." "That's a good place to start," I said. "I meant what I said," he added. "About you being the only thing that makes sense." I sat up, heart loud in my chest. "Jamie, I know this doesn't fix anything." He cut in, still staring out the window. "But when I was with Tess, I kept trying to force something that should have felt easy. Like I was auditioning for a life I didn't actually want. I didn't speak, not yet. And when she said I wasn't being honest with myself," he continued, "I got defensive. But she was right, because when I pictured the rest of my life, I couldn't see her in it. I saw someone else." He turned, finally looking at me. "I saw you." It hit different when he said it that plainly, like something cracked open in my chest. I swallowed. "You sure you're not just confusing comfort with something else?" "I've been confused for a long time," he said. "But I'm not confused now." He took a step closer, then another. Stopped at the foot of the bed, eyes locked on mine. "I didn't know what it was when we were younger," he said. "I thought it was just a deep friendship." That's what I told myself. But then you stopped coming around, and I missed you in a way that didn't feel like missing a friend. And when I saw you again after all that time, it was like my entire body remembered something I'd been trying to forget. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until he sat down beside me. "I don't want to rush this," he said, "but I don't want to walk away from it either." I looked at him for a long time, let myself really see him. All the years of closeness, the near misses, the late night texts, the easy laughter, the small moments that had felt too intimate for words. Suddenly, it all made sense. "Okay," I said softly, "then don't walk away." He smiled, and it was the first real one I'd seen on him in weeks. We spent the rest of the day doing absolutely nothing. Walked around the town, ate greasy eggs at the diner, bought a bottle of wine for later. Everything was quiet and easy, but there was something different under the surface now, something warmer, a thread pulling us closer with every moment. That night, we sat on the dock again, our legs dangling over the edge, the bottle between us. No big confessions, no forced romance, just closeness, just presence. At one point, he leaned his head against my shoulder and let it rest there. "Is this okay?" he asked. I nodded. Yeah, and it was. It really was. Back in the room, he didn't ask this time. Just crawled into my bed again, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And this time, he didn't leave space between us. His hand found mine under the covers, fingers lacing gently. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. We stayed another 2 days in that town that barely existed. No real plans, no schedule, just slow mornings, long walks, and nights tangled up in conversations that bled into the dark. Jamie didn't kiss me. Not once. But the way he looked at me, touched my hand without thinking, let his arm brush against mine while we stood in line for coffee. It all said enough. It wasn't hesitation. It was care. Like he wasn't just trying to figure out what he wanted, but how to hold it without breaking it. And honestly, I didn't need more than that. On our last night there, we sat on the dock again, the same spot where he first admitted the truth to himself, and to me. This time, it was colder. The kind of cold that bit at your cheeks and made your breath visible. He offered me his hoodie. I didn't take it. Instead, I said, "You know this thing doesn't get easier when we go back." "I know. There'll be questions," I added. "Judgments. People wondering what the hell happened between the guy who proposed and the guy who didn't get a proposal." He smiled softly. "Let them wonder." I turned to him, my voice quieter. "Are you ready for that?" Jamie looked at me. Really looked. "No," he said, "but I'm ready for you." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was peaceful. It felt like landing. We drove back to the city the next morning. No music this time. Just the hum of the highway and the quiet that fills the space between people who no longer need to say everything out loud. When we got back to my place, he didn't go to his apartment. He brought his duffel inside, dropped it by the couch like he didn't expect to unpack it just yet. Then he pulled the ring box out of his jacket and set it on my kitchen counter. I raised an eyebrow. He shrugged. Didn't feel right to return it. "What are you gonna do with it?" He opened the box slowly, like it might still sting. Then he pulled out the ring, held it up to the light, and for a second, it glinted like it still belonged to someone. "Maybe I'll melt it down," he said. "Turn it into something else." "Like what?" Jamie looked over at me. "I don't know yet," he said, "but something honest." That night, we slept in my bed again. It wasn't weird anymore. It wasn't full of unspoken rules or accidental brushes of skin. We were past all that now. The in-between had finally been named, and in the dark, when he finally leaned over and kissed me, soft, slow, careful, it didn't feel like a surprise. It felt like something that had already happened 1,000 times in another life. The thing about starting something with someone who already knows you, really knows you, is that there's no performance, no first date version of yourself. You can't hide behind small talk or pretend you don't snore or act like you never cry at dumb commercials. They already know you're messy when you cook and sometimes leave laundry in the dryer for 2 days. Jamie knew all of that, and I knew his stuff too, like how he always eats the crust of a sandwich first, or how he talks to himself when he's writing emails, or how he gets this tiny wrinkle between his eyebrows when he's trying not to cry. We fell into something that didn't feel like falling at all. It felt like walking home barefoot after a long day, familiar, grounding, kind of vulnerable. Of course, that didn't mean everything was easy. It took less than a week for the first crack to show. He got a text from Tess. We were making dinner when it came through. He was slicing onions, I was stirring pasta, and his phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at it. Froze. I turned the burner down and looked at him. "You okay?" "She wants to talk," he said, voice low. "In person." I nodded slowly. "What did you say?" "I haven't replied." Silence stretched between us. Then, softly, he asked, "Should I go?" I could have said no. I could have told him he didn't owe her anything. But I didn't. Because I'm not built like that, and because even if I wanted to pretend this wasn't complicated, it was. "She deserves closure," I said. He looked relieved and guilty all at once. "I don't want her to think I was cheating," he said. "I wasn't. You know that, right?" "I know," I said, "but she might not." He nodded, then went back to slicing the onion, even though his hands were shaking slightly. He met her 2 days later. Told me he'd rather do it at a park than a cafe. "Less trap that way," he said. I didn't ask for details when he came back, just handed him a cup of tea and let him sit in silence. Eventually he spoke. "She cried," he said, "but not like heartbreak. More like frustration. Like she'd known all along and hoped she was wrong." I sat down next to him. "She asked if it was about you," he added. I raised my eyebrows. "What did you say?" "The truth," he said simply. "That I didn't know what I was doing when I proposed. That I thought I was supposed to want that kind of life. And that I wasn't just in love with the idea of you. I was in love with you." That part made me blink. He looked over. "Was that okay?" I reached over and took his hand. "Yeah," I said. "It was more than okay." He leaned his head against my shoulder and didn't say anything else for a long time. And life, after that, didn't change overnight. We still had work. Bills, grocery runs, awkward run-ins with friends who didn't know how to ask what had happened, so they didn't. But something in the way we moved together shifted. He stopped sleeping on the couch. His toothbrush appeared next to mine. We started splitting groceries like it was second nature. One night, about a month in, we were lying on my bed in the dark, his head on my chest, my fingers in his hair, when he whispered, "I still have the ring." I didn't say anything. "I've been thinking," he continued. "What if I do melt it down?" I chuckled. "You've mentioned that." "No, I mean seriously. What if I take it to a jeweler and turn it into something else? Something I actually want to wear. Not a symbol of a life I didn't want." I rubbed his back gently. "You could." "I was thinking," he hesitated. "Maybe a pendant. Just something small. Simple." "You sure you want to carry it around?" He lifted his head slightly, looked at me in the dim light. "I do," he said, "because it's not about her anymore. Or the wedding. It's about what came after. What I found when I stopped pretending." That silenced me in the best way. Because I knew what he meant. He hadn't lost something when Tess gave the ring back. He'd found something. And so had I. Jamie got the ring remade 3 weeks later. I didn't go with him to the jeweler. He didn't ask me to. It felt like something he needed to do alone. A quiet kind of closure, not a grand gesture. He came home that afternoon with a small black box in his jacket pocket and a strange look on his face, half uncertain, half at peace. He didn't open the box right away, just set it down on the kitchen table between us and took a breath. "I didn't expect it to feel like this," he said. "Like what?" He looked up at me. "Final." I nodded. "It kind of is." He opened the box slowly. Inside was a silver chain with a small pendant hanging from it. Simple, geometric, clean lines. You wouldn't know by looking at it that it used to be an engagement ring, but I think that was the point. He picked it up, letting it dangle from his fingers. "It's weird. It feels lighter. You want me to put it on you?" I asked gently. He hesitated, then nodded. I took the chain, moved behind him, and fastened it around his neck. The pendant rested just below his collarbone, catching the light as he turned toward me. He touched it briefly. "Better?" I smiled. "Better." We didn't celebrate or make it a big thing. We ordered takeout, watched a dumb movie, fell asleep on the couch, limbs tangled like always. But later that night, as we were getting ready for bed, Jamie stood by the mirror, running his fingers over the pendant again. "You know I was scared," he said, voice low. "When I asked you to help pick the ring, I think I already knew I was making the wrong decision. But I didn't want to let anyone down." I leaned against the doorframe. "You didn't let anyone down, Jamie. You let yourself start over." He turned to me. "I don't want to mess this up." "You're not." "I've never done this before," he admitted. "Like, been with a guy. Not even close." "I know." He took a step closer. "I don't want to be just experimenting." My throat tightened. "Are you?" He shook his head. "No. That's the thing. It doesn't feel like a question. It just feels like this was always supposed to happen." I reached for his hand. He let me take it. "We don't have to prove anything," I said. "Not to anyone." That night, he kissed me like it wasn't a beginning or an end, just the middle of something honest, something that didn't need a name or a label or a deadline. Just space to grow. 6 months later, we moved into a new place. A little bigger, more light, fewer memories tied to the past. On moving day, Jamie unpacked the black box with the pendant, still wearing it, always wearing it, and placed the empty box in the top drawer of our shared dresser. "I thought you were getting rid of that," I said. He shrugged. "Maybe someday." "Sentimental?" "Symbolic," he said. "It started as one thing, became another. Kind of like us." He looked at me then, and I knew what he meant. There are stories that start with love at first sight. Ours didn't. Ours started with a ring meant for someone else. And somehow, it still led here, to a place where love didn't arrive with fireworks or declarations, but with quiet mornings, shared groceries, soft touches, and late-night conversations that turned into something steady, real, and fully ours.